Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Investor Lab, the auditory epicenter for passionate people seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. And on today's show, we tackle a very important topic for anyone who is buying a property, whether they be a homeowner or an investor, and that is building inspections. In fact, the guest I had today, Elias Oostveen from Home Integrity Building Consultants in WA, we went through heaps of stuff. We basically covered all of the top things that you need to know about getting a building inspection, how to choose the right building inspector. What does a building inspector do? We talk about some horror stories. We covered a lot of ground. We dig into what Elias and the team do in WA and how, what makes them very good at what they do. All kinds of stuff. So it's actually quite valuable. And it's actually a topic that we have not covered on the Investor Lab podcast before is building inspections. So I think this episode's great. We get to know a little bit more about Elias and his backstory, and it's always really great to connect and hear the journey as well. So I'm confident you're going to love this episode too. So without any further ado, let's get stuck right into it. Oh, wait. Sorry, I always say that, and then we've got other things, right? So if you've got any questions about this episode or any questions you would like us to answer on the show, feel free to email them through to til@dashdot.com.au. That's til@dashdot.com.au. Now that has been said, without any further ado, let's get stuck right into it, and I'll see you on the inside. Hey guys, welcome back to the Investor Lab. Joining me today is Elias Oostveen from Home Integrity Building Consultants. They are building inspector specialists in WA and are really close partners of Dashdot and really helping a lot of our clients. Elias, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Goose. I really appreciate it.
Mate, it's a pleasure. So, mate, I want to dig in today. I want to ask, building inspections, building and pass, like all of this kind of stuff, it's such a critical part of the buying process or the acquisition process of any property, whether it's an investment or a home. And so what I want to do today is we've actually never even really talked about building a pest inspection on like nearly 200 episodes in on the podcast. We've never really spoken about it. So, I know, right? So crazy, right? So I'd love to use this episode as an opportunity to kind of pick apart, give people some up, because I think it's something that a lot of people don't really think about, right? Or don't really understand the importance of, or I think it's just a bit of a black hole there for people. So I'd love to dig into that. But first, mate, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Why are you doing what you're doing? Yeah, give us a bit of background.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Look, it really simply, we like to take the problems out of property, okay? For a lot of people, it's really scary buying a home. They've done a little bit of due diligence on where they want to put the kids into school, how far the bus stop and the train stops away, whether it's investment property for their ever home. But yeah, houses can be a pretty daunting experience, obviously. And, people are spending $500,000, $1 million, $3 million plus on a house. So it can be very, very scary. So we just like helping people, really. We're registered builders, we're structural engineers. We do loads of pre-purchase building inspections. We help people solve problems with defects, whether they're building a house. We've got 12 guys and we all love building and we all love construction.
Why? Like, where did it start for you though? You didn't did you at 5 years old when someone said, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone else said, I want to be an astronaut. And you said, I want to run a building inspection. Like, where did it come from? Like, why?
Look, probably my old man was a huge inspiration for me. My dad's a migrant from Holland, kicking around in New Zealand. I've been always just hanging out with Dad, doing bits and pieces. He's a plumber and boilermaker by trade, but would pretty much give everything a crack. I think it was just a natural progression for me to become a registered builder. I have built everything from aquatic centres, apartment buildings, houses, developments, renovations. Done all sorts of building work, yeah.
And so just to be super clear, right? So your pathway started in the construction side of building, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So actually building stuff, like actually building. Yeah.
Nail bag. Cracking around. Yep.
And exactly. now primarily it's inspecting.
Now what we do is we get paid to look at stuff and write reports.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when was that transition for you? Like when did you decide to put down the nail bag and pick up the pens?
10 years ago, mate. 10 years ago, I was driving to Lancelin with which is a little surfing spot with a good mate of mine who was in real estate, and said, he just really simply planted the seed and said, mate, you should get into building inspections. You're an awesome guy. You've got really good manner of dealing with people. You'll be able to demystify the whole inspection and building process for everyone. You should get into building inspections. So that was 10 years ago, and now there's 16 of us. So yeah, it's been great.
Nice.
Awesome. That's transition.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Better lifestyle, better for the back too, I imagine.
Yeah, a lot better, mate. Exactly.
Awesome. So I'm interested, like, did you see a bit of a gap in the market there? Because like you've obviously come from a building specialization, and did you see that there was a real need for like a higher level of expertise in the market, or tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, great question. So probably the biggest gap that I found with a lot of my competitors is doom and gloom and reporting on, reasons why not to buy the house, where I like to call it the way it is. And I like to diagnose problems so people have a better understanding of the reason that ceiling is sagging or the reason that brickwork is cracking in that location. So not to gloss over issues, but just to contextualize exactly what's going on so people can make a really informed decision. Whereas I find a lot of other building inspection companies just like to report on doom and gloom. Oh, you're lucky you got us in to do the inspection. We've saved you thousands of dollars. I like to think of reasons why people want to buy the house, not why people don't want to buy the house.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective because I reckon I've looked at, I don't know, thousands, maybe certainly hundreds and hundreds of building reports from all parts of the country, right? So I've seen them from all kinds of different companies in all different states, all of the different stuff, right? And one common trend is that they always read like a horror story, right? They always do, right? Now, to be fair and to give some context around that, usually the conversation with the building inspector is something along the lines of like, well, we need to point out all of the problems, but by the way, I'll tell you, like, I'll give you the real kind of lay of the land off record, basically, right? So not on paper.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense as well. But like, what are the problems that I see with that is that people receive these reports and it can bloody give them a heart attack. They could be like, oh my God, the place is trashed. And really, it could be a couple of minor issues. So how do you navigate that fine line between telling it like it is, but not over dramatizing what it is? How do you walk that line?
Look, Goose, I think that's really the art of what's made Home Integrity who they are today. We get referred into 90% of our work just because of the way we deal with and all stakeholders, sellers, buyers, agents, whoever it is. And like I said, it's about compartmentalizing all of the issues. And like if it's a leaking shower, for argument's sake, leaking showers are never great. But understanding, is it a plumbing issue? Is it a tiling issue? Is it something beyond that? Do all the tiles have to be ripped up and a new waterproof membrane put in, or is it just a silicone joint between the floor and the wall tile? So just having a really deep understanding of what the issue is and giving the buyer some context around, well, is it a $300 repair or is it a $15,000 remodel? That people really appreciate that.
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's ultimately what they do.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting insight, right? Because I guess seeing, are they problems or solutions? Because you're right, it could be a leak in the shower, but it's like, well, leaking shower. If you just said to someone, hey, the property's got a leaking shower, right? That person who receives that information might be like, oh my God, this could be the end of the world. But it could be like, there's a leaking shower and it's a $50 fix, or it's a leaking shower and it's a $500 fix, or it's a leaking shower and it's a $15,000 fix. I have this thing with all of our property managers. They tend to email us and they're like, hey, can we fix this thing? And I'm sort of like, well, what's like, give me a ballpark. And they're like, oh, we can't give estimates or whatever. I'm like, is it a $50 problem, a $500 problem, a $5,000 problem, or a $50,000 problem? That's all I need to know to be able to make a better and more informed decision. So I think it's a really good trying to reframe that and give people context around like, well, this is actually the scale of it and this is the solutions.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. People are quite accepting that their second-hand home comes with some maintenance issues. They just want to know some context around what the repair looks like. And they don't just want to be delivered with a poo sandwich and okay, go away and deal with it yourself. What they're looking for is solutions, and I think that's the space that we offer most value in.
How have you? Because you're all over Perth and North Perth, South of Perth, right? How have you seen the market change over there? You said you got into this about 10 years ago. That's a very interesting time to get into the property sector in WA. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, apparently when I started Home Integrity, it was the worst real estate market WA seen in 18 years. And I managed to actually grow the business year on year up to what it is today through that time, which has been quite interesting. I don't know. We get referred into work, whether it's the agent, whether it's the settlement agent, conveyancer, or even the mortgage broker. It might be the seller. So we might even be doing an inspection on a house on behalf of a buyer, and that seller wants to buy a house themselves, and we'll end up doing an inspection for them. So I think it's just all about being a nice human, Goose, in this market, whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market. People want reasons to move. People have circumstances in their life where they've got to move house, and we just want to, like I said, demystify and take the problems out of that whole transaction for them.
And over the last 10 years in Perth, have you seen a change in the type of buyer? Like, I imagine at a certain point it was mostly owner-occupiers looking to buy a home and move, and maybe there's more investors now. Have you noticed anything like that from yourself, anecdotally?
I think the last 2 years we've seen a lot of people upgrading and wanting to buy, with the COVID issues, people not going on holidays and moving around as much. We've seen a lot of people wanting to upgrade their houses. We've seen slightly less investor activity because the rental market's so tight over here in Western Australia in particular, which has opportunities and risks associated with it, obviously. But I think that predominantly they've been owner-occupiers. Yeah,
interesting. That was a very interesting, and I just want to clarify something you said there. So a very tight rental market over there, right?
It's unbelievable.
Which is, it's ridiculous, right? It's bonkers, right? Yeah. And you said that represents opportunities for investors, which of course it does, right? And also risks. What risks do you see coming from that?
Oh, good question. I think just finding the right property. Ultimately, identifying. Obviously, this is not a space that I'm in. This is more your expertise, Goose. But I think the risk for a investor is just not understanding that it is a tight market, but making the right decision on the right property for the right reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's not just a tight rental market. It's a tight buying market, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it can be pretty tricky to make sure that you're not getting caught in the fray of just like the activity and just buying random stuff. So
exactly, there's a lot of excitement for. It's a different driver, obviously. It's more of a emotional buy for someone upgrading and wanting to move the kids and the family to a better house and a better lifestyle versus an investor-driven decision. So investors trying to compete with an emotional buyer it can be quite difficult.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of FOMO.
Speaking of that, right? So when you're dealing with homeowners versus investors, right? Let's say you do an inspection report, right? Who gets more upset if there's issues with the property? Like if there's a homeowner buying a property and it's like, okay, here's a few things that are broken or whatever around it. Is it more that investors look at it pragmatically and say, okay, there's a few things that we need to fix there and that's cool? Or is it homeowners that go, oh my God, this is my dream home and I can't believe there's things wrong with it? Who's actually, I'm interested in that.
I think investors, like I said previously, are quite realistic that their second-hand home comes with some maintenance issues. The person upgrading for emotional reasons is quite enamored in the whole process, and they tend to overlook issues, and that's all right. I get the retaining walls falling down. We'll as long as it's not going to kill him, we'll get to that later. We just want to move into the suburbs. So I think when it's such a hot market, which it has been for the last couple of years, a lot of buyers are very, very accepting, more accepting than usual.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
That's funny because you can kind of see how that would be playing. I'd probably do the same thing. I'd be like, nah, it's great. We'll just do it later. But if it was an investment choice, I'd be like, well, we've got to knock, if the retaining wall's falling down, like, what are we going to negotiate off the price, sort of thing. So no,
exactly.
Well, tell me, what are the top, say, 3 things that people need to be thinking about when as they're approaching this part of the purchasing process, like when they're thinking about getting a building inspection, how do they need to be thinking about this?
The biggest problem we see quite often is when buyers don't understand the condition that they've signed up to. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's all very well asking the building inspector to do a really detailed inspection of the property, and it varies across states. Okay, so we get eastern state buyers coming over to WA. There's a lot of eastern state buyers that have come over that want to move their families, and the process is very different over here. Over east, it's the cooling off period. You go do all your due diligence, negotiate the offer based on all your due diligence. It's really simple. In Western Australia, it's very, very different. It's more of a conditional sale. So the seller will put a condition in the contract, which will talk about structural defects and perhaps termite issues. Then the buyer needs to go get a report, and basically, if the report says there are structural issues or termite issues, then it's up to the seller to remedy those issues. If the seller doesn't want to remedy those issues, then the buyer can get out of the contract. Now, that's good and it's bad. It's quite a narrow scope for the poor buyer. So if there's a leaking shower, generally not covered for the seller to fix. If there's a leaking roof, not covered for the seller to fix. Only major structural defects. And it's really important people understand what the definition of major structural defects are. And I think that gets glossed over when people are buying their houses. Yeah.
Interesting. Right. So number one thing is understand the contract that you're signing when you're buying the property.
100%. Yeah.
Because in WA you can get due diligence clauses wound into the contract too, but you've got to know that. You've got to get that kind of get that stuff wound in.
And you've got to ask the question. And if it's a competitive buying environment, there's 3 buyers all wanting to put their hat in the ring.
Yeah.
And two buyers have got conditions and one buyer hasn't got a condition.
Yeah.
And they're all around the same sort of price. It's pretty obvious which offer is more attractive to the seller.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so number one thing that people need to be thinking about is make sure you understand your contract conditions. Yeah, I've actually been in a situation before. The first property we bought where we didn't really understand the contract, and the guy who was selling us the property, I can't remember. We got some advice to basically go finance different context, but to go finance. They were like, "Don't worry about it. You can get finance. Just go finance unconditional as soon as you sign the contract." And we were like, "Yeah, no worries." And then, sure. Anyway, we managed to work that out eventually. But understanding the conditions of the contract is critical. What else should people be thinking about as what's the kind of next thing they need to be thinking about?
Hire a competent, experienced building inspector. So apart from Queensland, there's no requirements for qualifications or licensing or regulations around building inspectors. So anyone can pick up an iPad and go do building inspections.
Well, then how do you know? How can you find a good one? How do you, aside from obviously if you're in the Perth region in WA, obviously work with Home Integrity, of course. Little plug there, of course. But if there's somewhere else in Australia, then how could they tell if someone is the right person for them?
Okay, there's 2 things I would ask as an absolute bare minimum. Are you a registered builder? So each state has a building commission type regulatory body. So ask for the builder's registration number, not a license number or anything weird like that. It's a builder's registration number. Ask for that, and then make sure that they've got professional indemnity insurance. So if something goes sideways or something gets missed, then you can act on the professional indemnity insurance to save your backside.
Got it. Okay, so make sure you got the right person for the job. Check that they're a registered builder and that they've got professional indemnity insurance. And is there anything else that people should be thinking about in this kind of part of the journey?
Look, getting both inspections done at the same time, like the building inspection and the pest inspection, is like really prudent. All of our inspectors are registered builders, and we're also qualified to inspect for timber pests. It's interesting you say that, because there was a case in Brisbane not too long ago where the buyer, I won't say got talked out of, but understood there was a competitive environment in bidding on this particular house. She forego the building and pest inspection, only to find out about 6 months later that the house was riddled with termites. And the house unfortunately ended up needing to get knocked down.
Yeah, unreal. Yeah,
so she bought a $600,000 block.
Ouch. Ouch.
Ouch. All right.
Okay, so get the building inspection done at the same time as the pest inspection, right? That's cool. That makes sense. What about plumbing and electrical? Like, do you think that people, I know that's probably outside of your scope, right? But do you think people should get a plumbing and electrical inspection for every property they buy and stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Okay. So in WA, most offering acceptances include what's called a good working order inspection, or it's called a good working order warranty. So it's not a condition like the structural and the termite. It's a warranty, and it warrants that the electrical, plumbing, and gas fixtures and fittings will be in good working order at time of settlement. So what a lot of astute buyers are getting us to do as part of our structural and termite checks, we are doing a good working order check for our buyers. But the buyers are giving the report to the sellers saying, hey, look, we understand there's going to be a pre-settlement inspection done. These are all the issues that have been identified up front. Just please make sure these are all done before settlement. And a lot of sellers are actually quite appreciative of that information. They're going away, fixing light globes, fixing hot plate ignitions, making sure they've got their alarm codes in check, batteries for the smoke alarms and the remote controls for the split air cons. Then the buyer's coming through 5 days before settlement, everything's checked, everything's working. It's a nice experience for the buyer. They're coming through and they're just figuring out, which kid's got what bedroom and which wall the flat screen TV's going on, instead of arguing over little maintenance issues that the seller had already obligated to fix.
Well, that covers the kind of like the maintenance kind of stuff, and that makes sense. What about, just in the same way that a building inspector, I mean, it'd be good to maybe, what does a building inspector even do? Because I kind of know, you get in the roof cavity, have a look under look at the stumps, you're getting right in and around it. So I'd love to kind of circle back to that. Like what the hell does a building inspector even actually do when they go to the property? Is it just like tick a box? But in that context as well, like getting a plumbing and electrical inspection as well seems like it would probably be a good idea as well for the underlying things that you might not see when you're flicking switches.
Yeah, look, and we do. So some clients that are buying older houses that might have older wiring and the old circuit, the old fuse boxes, that sort of thing. They do, and we do have one of our guys who is a registered builder and he's also a licensed electrician, Pete, and he'll go through and do a full electrical inspection. But again, it's up to the buyer to make sure that due diligence is written into the contract. So there's no point, and what action is the seller going to take when a problem is found? So, if it's to the buyer's satisfaction, then that's quite open-ended and quite risky for the seller, and sellers aren't going to be happy with that. But it's good for the buyer. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, and a good agent will find a balance between what's going to keep the buyer on side and what they're going to be able to get across the line from the seller. So to answer your question, on older houses, absolutely, I'd recommend a full plumbing check and an electrical check. That is the ultimate in due diligence for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so back to the question I had a second ago. What the hell does a building inspector actually do? Go to the house, you've got an iPad, you tick some boxes.
Got a torch.
What happens? What happens? Tell us, give us the nitty gritty.
Yeah, really simple. So we'll check the footings, the ground slab, the timber floor, the stumps. We'll check all the walls. We'll check the ceiling frame, roof frame, retaining walls. So that's a basic structural check. So that gets done regardless. That's module 0. And what we're looking for there is structural defects to the structural elements. Okay, so if the connection's being pulled apart, if the wall's not performing its intended structural performance, if the floor's bowing, if a stump has been chewed out by a termite, all of those sorts of things are in the basic structural checks, and that's done regardless of what level of inspection the client has chosen to go for. Then we'll get on the roof. We'll check all of the roof cover, gutters, flashings, downpipes, any penetrations through the roof. Is the roof going to leak, or does it have the potential to leak? We'll check surface water drainage is really important around the property. So is the stormwater getting away from the property? Is it impacting on the damp-proof course? Is it causing erosion to the foundation material? That's really, really important. And then there's Appendix C of the Australian Standard that talks about all the building elements. So then we can check things like windows, doors, ceilings, insulation, driveways, pathways, patios, pergolas, fences, gates. There's really everything, and so it can be just the basic structural checks or absolutely every building element. So and everything in between. So it depends on the type of buyer, really. Some buyers just want to stick to the basic contractual conditions, and some buyers need a lot more clarity and a lot more information to make an informed decision.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, right? Because you want to go in eyes wide open, I would have thought.
Yeah, look, 100%. But it's the difference between spending $330 on an inspection and $895. One inspection might take 2 hours plus report writing. The other inspection might take 5 hours plus report writing. So it's a very different. One might be 10, 15 pages long. The other might be 40 to 80 pages long.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Good insights. What's the biggest what's the biggest horror story or whatever that you've seen? Like maybe a property you inspected, it was just like,
Well, that's a good one. We see some really interesting stuff. We do about 8,000 inspections a year. So we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's no question. For me, it's either termite damage. We've seen some really, really bad termite damage. It's really surprising how often we find termites. Most of the time, they're not really affecting the building structure. They're just chewing out a bit of timber that's in contact with the ground or an old stump. They're doing what termites do, and a lot of the time it's okay. But sometimes the sneaky little buggers will crawl up behind a downpipe and like chew out half the roof. And we've had to carefully back out of some roof voids because we've stood on a ceiling joist and it's crumbled under your foot, sort of thing. And it's like, whoa, we've got a proper infestation here. So we've seen that. Subsidence is a really interesting one as well. Subsidence is predominantly you'll see some minor horizontal cracking or some major horizontal cracking at around chest height or sort of head height around the outside of the property, and they'll be replicated on the inside of the property. And what that is, it's a telltale sign of a much larger issue, and quite often there'll be some undermining of the footing. The foundation material will get washed away. There'll be a downpipe or a soak well in close proximity to that part of the building that has eroded. And a lot of the time, these things will go undetected until the house gets put on the market. But yeah, subsidence is an inexpensive fix. It's getting easier now. Yeah.
And what happens in these kind of scenarios where, like, someone's selling a house and they might not realize that it's stuffed, basically, right? Yeah.
Well, the good thing is the clients that we've come across, and I don't know, with just a function of who the nice people we deal with, but we find that most of the time buyers just want to do the right thing. If they're unaware of this issue, and when we uncover an issue like this, they're like, oh my God, we didn't even know. Like, what can we do to fix it, Elias? Can you assist? Is there anything, anyone you can recommend? So we don't get directly involved in the fixes ourselves because we think that's a bit of a conflict of interest. So, we've found a problem, and by the way, we can come and fix it for you.
Yeah,
so yeah, we try and stay away from that. Well, we do stay away from that. But yeah, we find buyers do want to do the right thing most of the time. Yes, and where they
sellers
are the sellers, sorry, or buyers as well. But yes, the sellers do want to do the right thing most of the time. And look, that's the mechanism in the contract. You know, where they can't or they're unable to rectify the issue, that's where the buyer's got the right to terminate the contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. So I want to shift gears a little bit. What motivates you to do this, to wake up every day and do this? Like, what's driving you? Like, what are your goals?
I get a huge kick out of helping people. I really ingrain in the guys and all of the girls that work for us. It's just there's something about sending the report through, walking someone through the report, and the amount of appreciation and gratitude we get from clients. Oh, thank you so much, Elias. I really appreciate you going through that property. You know, you've identified some issues that we didn't even know about, and you've walked us through the issues. We get review after review of just how appreciative people are of the verbal debrief, just not lumping up with the report in their inbox and saying, okay, see you later, enjoy. It's just really nice making that human connection, just walking someone through a massive investment that they're going to be making when they're in a time that they really need a confidant. They really need someone in their corner. They need someone that they can rely on. And being that person is really awesome. We love it.
Awesome. Love it. And so you started this about 10 years ago, right? You're going to business, you got 10 to 16. Fast forward 20 years from now, or even 10 years for that matter. Where do you see yourself? What does life look like for you?
I'd be retired and surfing lots in Margaret River. But in order to get to that place, we want to emulate what we're doing here in Western Australia, really across the country. There's no question. We've got a lot more love to give. A lot of buyers and sellers around the country. There's absolutely no reason why the success that we've achieved here in Western Australia, we can't continue and help more buyers through the rest of the country. It's a really simple model we've got. It's centered around being a good human and being nice to people and being super helpful and adding lots of value. And yeah, that's what we want to continue to do across the country.
Nice. And if you could go back 20 years, right? Go back, meet your former self 20 years ago. What advice would you give you? What advice would you give your 20 years younger self?
Great question, Goose. I'm not unhappy with the pathway where I got to where we are today. It's kind of like you need to go through a bit of trial by fire, and I needed to do lots of building work, and I needed to run some other businesses to understand what the culture piece is at Home Integrity, why staff are so important, why it's so important to be a great leader, and what that involves. And it's kind of like I needed to go through all of that, or some adversity in my life, to really appreciate what I've got today, to be grateful for. So I'm not sure that I would do anything different. I guess I would have liked to have sped it up, but I don't think I would have got the same outcome today had I tried to fast track it. Because when I was younger, I did feel like I was in a bit of a hurry. But now I'm smelling the roses more, and it's been a much better journey.
Awesome. What does being a good leader mean to you? Or what do you think what makes a good leader?
I think listening to all of my guys and girls, giving them lots of autonomy, making sure that that they're contributing to the team. It's not all about just a building inspector doing a great job and having an awesome debrief with the client. It's so much more than that. It's the marketing team that gets the lead, that we put all our marketing efforts together, that the messaging is just perfect. It's the girls in the office taking the booking and understanding the client's requirements and, dealing with the client's emotions at the time and, walking them through all the different options. So it's a holistic approach, and it's something that we celebrate holistically. So when we do get a good review, it's not just about, well done, Jeremy, or well done, Dean, or congratulations, Mike. It's Cindy, it's Joe, it's Anne, it's Michelle, it's Glenn, it's everyone involved in the team. It's we've got to take everyone along for the ride. Good.
Love it. And I want to ask another question. So you said that you feel like you had to go through some adversity, right, in order to be able to appreciate where you're at right now. Do you think it's possible, sort of a philosophical question, do you think it's possible to have gratitude without adversity?
I think we're getting deep now. I think it's harder, Goose. Put it this way. I think it's a different level of appreciation. I think, when you've gone through some hard times in whatever it is, your life, your business, and you experience a little speed bump in the next business that you have or the next relationship you have, you can draw back on your previous experiences and you can think to yourself, this is nothing compared to what I previously went through. It's like you can push through much quicker, I think. And things become way more clearer, and it's a really good perspective driver.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love that, because I think you're right, because once you've, just to put it bluntly, if you've eaten shit, right, when you go to eat it again, you already know what it tastes like. So it's a lot easier to get it down, basically, right? So,
are we going there? Okay, yeah. I'm hearing you.
Yeah. So I think it's really, and so like now, like everyone faces challenges and all of that kind of stuff. Now I know that when I face challenges and stuff, I'm like, I stop and catch myself, and I'm like, oh, this is one of those moments where this is actually going to make things easier and faster later on. Like, cool, this might be challenging now, but later on, this is going to speed me up, so.
Oh, good. Exactly. Like we get a lot of really good reviews, like really, really good reviews. And I'm so grateful and thankful that we're getting these good reviews. But when we get the odd bad one, I get excited because
how good is it? You get to work out what to fix.
Exactly. I think, we got to tighten up that funnel. Oh, we got to fix up our offer a little bit. There's something that's gone wrong here. We've got to tighten up the way we do things. It's a real opportunity for me, and my staff kind of spin out sometimes because, like, I get a little bit excited about these problems that we get to solve. But I just see it as an opportunity to tighten up the way we do things and make things better for clients.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Elias, I've really enjoyed the chat. We've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything else? Is there anything else you wanted to chuck in there before we wrap it up, or do you think we've covered it?
I think we've been it's been a deep dive on building inspections. It's changing market conditions at the moment. I feel in Australia, people are always buying, people are always selling, and due diligence and understanding what you're buying is absolute paramount and key on such a massive investment. So I think we've covered all bases, Goose.
Awesome, mate. Great to have you on the show. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
We look forward to speaking to you again soon.